Welcome to another episode of Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. This is the show which highlights the importance of estate planning and why everyone needs to do it. And then again, of course, the unfortunate consequences of what happens far too often when people have not planned. I'm your host, John Braddock, author of Click Here When I Die, and the founder of My Life and Wishes, The Legacy Vault, an online planning and document storage solution created to make things easier for those you love. As you know, on this show, I love having conversations with really cool people. Some are attorneys and others from different professions, but they all have one thing in common. They're passionate about helping others. Sometimes my guests have interesting hobbies or other things that they do when they're not lawyering or doing their normal day job. And that being said, I've got a great one for you today, folks. I'm thrilled to have with me as my guest, attorney and all-around fun guy, John Palley. Let me tell you a little bit about John. John is a California probate and estate attorney and has been doing this important work since 1994. He's a graduate of Sonoma State University with a degree in international business and earned his law degree at the University of Pacific McGeorge School of Law. John is of counsel to the law firm of CunninghamLegal with offices all throughout California. Through the years, John has participated in every professional organization you can think of available to estate planning attorneys. The American Bar Association Estate Planning Section, the California State Bar Trust and Estate Section, Sacramento County Estate Planning Council, Sacramento Planned Giving Forum, and many, many others. John has also taught estate and probate classes through UC Davis Extension and the National Business Institute, among others. He also was the in-print probate estate expert for the Sacramento Bee newspaper in 2010. He is a certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law as deemed by the State Bar of California Board of Legal Specializations, and assists clients in the area of estate planning, probate, real estate, and law taxes, and services his clients with their legal needs all throughout the state of California. Lastly, while John works as a California attorney, by day, he works, and some nights and weekends, as a stadium usher at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada, where he and his wife, Kathleen, make their home. John and Kathleen have two college-age children working toward their undergraduate degrees. John is a proud member of the Las Vegas Rotary Club. Hey, welcome, John.
Hey, John, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. How are things out in the Las Vegas area today?
Well, you won't believe it, but it's actually warming up. So here in the desert, we are gearing up for the summer.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Yeah. We're doing the same down here in Arizona. So for those listening to this some point in the future, it is the 19th of April, 2024. And we in Arizona, as our good neighbors in Nevada, are coming into their favorite time of year, which is called hydrate or die.
Very true. Very true.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'm so happy to have you, John. Hey, as our audience knows, I love talking about people's passion, the why behind why people do what they do. Some people don't have a why, they just have a job and they go do it, right? But the people I love chatting with are people who have a why. And so I wanted to know, 30 years ago, why did you choose estate law, out of all the other areas of law you could practice?
Well, in all seriousness, John, what I've always told people when they ask me what they should specialize in law school, or what they have a passion for, I usually am honest and I say, you'll probably learn to love whatever you get a job in. And that's probably true for a lot of people. In my case, actually, both my parents were attorneys, and they both did a lot of estate planning. They were a little bit more general practitioners back in the day, and that's sort of what I knew. And so after law school, I had the opportunity to open my own practice, and there you go. It's sort of what I knew, and I enjoyed it. and have always enjoyed the meeting people, the stories you hear, and then ultimately, like you said, just helping them get through the business at hand, and so they can get on with their lives.
Yeah, I hear that. Kind of falling into family business, although on your own, right?
Right?
Uh,
Exactly.
my father was in the insurance business, and so I grew up hearing all kinds of boring insurance stories at the dinner table and those things, and I ended up in the insurance business. You know, totally different. I mean, he was a big property and casualty insurance guy, had a big firm, and I ended up on the employee benefit side of the world. So while he was happy I got into insurance, I think I was maybe a disgrace because he thought his area was a lot better,
Right?
right?
Very good.
Oh gosh. Well, hey, as you know, I call this show Estate Planning Nightmares, and the reason for that is that I'm passionate about educating people on the importance, obviously, of estate planning, and that bad things, can happen far too often if people don't make a plan. So I'm sure in the last 30 years, you've seen a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Do you have any particular story or stories you'd like to share that might help shed some light on the importance of planning?
John, as you can likely imagine, after several thousand estates, probably planned a few thousand and then wrapped up a few thousand after death, we could probably do a 5-hour podcast, and I'd have some more stories. But I want to touch on the issue I have seen a lot over the years, and that is the people that fail to do the estate planning. And I'm gonna start with a quick story that actually reminds me very much of the work that you do with your book, Click Here When I Die, and also your website. And what it is the story of an incomplete estate plan, or partially complete. So I remember vividly about 5 years ago, I was sitting at home on a Saturday night. I was watching TV. I mean, I can vividly picture where I was. And I got a phone call from a friend. It popped up on my cell phone, and a friend and a client. And I picked it up, and it was actually his wife. And his wife explained that her husband had just had a heart attack. And her exact words were something to the effect of, I don't even know where the money is, or I don't know how to access the money, or something along those lines. And so we had done a living trust for this family, but they hadn't taken care of that practical side of making sure that both spouses, among others, know where stuff is and know how to access it. So for me, I immediately started working on my own basically list of what to do when I die. Anyway, so that was so when I met you and learned about the work you're doing, it hit home for me. But I'll circle it back a little further. So that was an incomplete estate plan, let's say. They did the legal documents, but just not the personal side. But the thing I want to talk about for just a moment is I've probably done over 2,000 California probate cases. So that's go to court and probate the estate. And I don't have the exact number, but I would bet that 75% of those people had no wills, no trust, no nothing. And the problem is, and I've seen this multiple times, is money can go to people, first of all, that you didn't intend for it to go to, and sometimes people you didn't even know, or people you didn't even like. And so I can think of several different cases in California law. Your what they call half-bloods siblings are treated exactly the same as your sibling that you grew up with and shared a bedroom with and all of that. So let's say mom or dad had another family. Maybe you didn't even know about them. I have seen it where those children could end up inheriting from you because they're all siblings, whether they're half-bloods, as the law says, or that you've never met, or the one that you shared the bedroom with growing up. And to me, that kind of thing is, I think for most people, that's not what their intent is. So even just doing a simple will would prevent, that kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm sure, as you've heard many of the episodes, do it yourself failures, other people not properly updating or completing a trust and leaving money to, disinherited children, or at least who they thought had been disinherited. And so, it's like, everyone has an estate plan, right? Those who have actually formalized it and done it with an attorney, and those who haven't done a thing and have no will. Their estate plan is the state in which they live in, right? Because the state's going to make all the decisions. And I don't know, for most of the listeners, if you're anything like me, the last thing you want is the government making decisions for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Most people have, specific plans and they want it done right. But something else you just said reminded me, and I won't name the name, but there's a large online organization. I think it's attorneys and paralegals and whatnot. And they do a lot of great work, but and they help people prepare wills and trusts. And part of the problem is they are not there in the room when you sign the documents. So their documents might be perfect, but the person has to actually execute the documents correctly. So typically in California, that would mean signing it with two witnesses present in the room. It's the fundamental law. And I've just seen the cases where the witnesses don't sign, or very common, they get the will notarized, which in California isn't valid. It's two witnesses. So again,
let me just
please
take a quick sidebar there, because you just said something really interesting. So in California, I want to draft up my own will or have an attorney do it. To make it valid, it has to be signed by two witnesses. I can't take it to a notary who's commissioned to authorize documents, right? Wow.
That's a common error. I've seen it a lot. Other documents in the estate plan, even the trust, the powers of attorney, all of those things, they're typically going to be notarized. But the will requires two witnesses unless it's what we call a holographic will, or the handwritten will. If it's in your own handwriting, you sign it, you date it, that's a valid will. But the ones that I'm speaking of are, again, prepared by, maybe it's a law firm or a paralegal, but they're not there to help get it executed. So that's the one instance. And then relatedly, which I know as you know, happens all the time, is they prepare a trust, but they just don't get their assets properly into the trust. So most common scenario, they fail to deed the house into the trust. During times when people are doing all the refinances on their house, they'll often deed the house out of the trust, do the refinance, fail to put the house back into the trust, and then they're looking at a probate court visit of some type after death. And, it's not an exciting and fun story, but it happens a lot. I've seen it many, many times.
Yeah. So the takeaway there, as I do with my estate planning attorney, is every year we have an annual trust review where we go through the list of the assets, what's changed. He's, working on my behalf to make sure I haven't, acquired new assets and failed to name a trust. Or in your example, I know a pour over will go so far, but it's not the panacea that you might think, right?
You hit it. A pour over will does exactly that. It pours over the assets into the trust that were omitted. However, at least in California, that pour over will end up in probate court to be executed to get the assets into the trust. There are exceptions to that, where if the dollar amount is below a certain threshold, approximately $185,000, there's another trust petition we can do. But in any event, you are hiring an attorney to get that stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I mean, it's such an intricate, area of law, and there's so much to be considered in getting it done. But at the same time, while some people might think it's expensive because it might cost $3,000 to $5,000, depending on where they are, to have it done, to preserve those assets, transfer wealth, and above all, keep the family out of court,
Yeah.
because the expense of going through probate for a year to 2 years is going to far exceed the amount to create the document in the first place.
Yeah, no question. And even people that say, oh, we don't really have a lot of assets, you could have a modest estate. Maybe it's a $300,000 house. Well, in California, there's a lot of houses worth, well above that. But let's just say $300,000. And you have, even if there were no other assets, just the cost of probate, the dollar cost, that is, between the attorney's fees and court costs, is going to be over $10,000. As you said, you can easily get a trust done for significantly less than that. Not to mention let's call it a year minimum in most counties in California. Again, every state's a little different. Certainly, I have heard there are some states that are very efficient with their probates. California has great sunshine and a lot of other great things, but efficient probate court process is not one of them, unfortunately. So making sure the assets are in the trust is key. But the other thing that I think a lot of people discount or don't think about is what happens if you're alive and you're just not able to handle your affairs. Well, you could have all the payable on death beneficiary designations you want. That doesn't apply if you're laying in a hospital bed alive, but unable to handle your affairs. And so that's where that living trust would come into play, to make it easy for your family to take care of you, or loved one, or whoever it is, your trusted person, to take care of you, make sure your bills are paid and all of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, incapacity is something that so many people don't think about,
Mm-hmm.
and and not having all the proper forms in place, POAs and such. Like you say, a spouse might not be able to access certain funds. That might be in a retirement plan that the person has, right?
I just had a call last week. One spouse has been moved into a care home, unable to handle their financial affairs. The other spouse needs to tap into the retirement account to get those funds, and they don't have the proper documents in place, and so they very likely, the well spouse, as I will call them, will likely end up in court in a conservatorship to get that court authority to access the funds. So it's a shame. I mean, it's really a shame.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm going to go back to something you said earlier, about houses in California. Come on. Are there any houses in California for $300,000?
You are correct. There's certainly not a lot. I laugh because they keep raising the threshold for what I call a mini probate. It's somewhere around $185,000. And I'm thinking, well, how many houses in California are worth less than that? There's not too many.
Right.
And they even have a procedure for less than again, it's changing, but it's around 55,000. So real property in California worth less than 55,000. I mean, other than timeshares or, a fractional piece of property, you're not getting too many. And even then, even for that, so it's the reduced, simplified procedure, it still goes to probate court. So again, even if you just have that timeshare in California, there could be a reason that you want to make sure that's in a living trust. Many reasons.
Oh yeah, and I know so many people. You see it probably in Nevada too. Over here in Arizona. I mean, the mass exodus of people leaving California, and it's like these good folks. Two people I know, they're actually educators. School teacher was one, and the other fellow was a coach for the high school, and they sold their house, came out here to God's waiting room, and they bought this mega house, well into seven figures, because they sold, a 40-year-old house that had, 1,800 square feet for $2.5 million. Right?
Yep.
Crazy.
Very true.
Crazy
Very
stuff.
true. And that's, something you just said is a good reminder too, is even if you're not diligent about going to your attorney every year, like you mentioned, I think that's great procedure to have. But even if you're not that diligent, if you move states, that's a really good time to make sure that you talk to an attorney, to make sure that your documents are in order. The one that I always focus on is the medical power of attorney, or living will, because if you're laying in a hospital bed in this new state, you want to make sure that they're familiar, that those hospital employees are familiar with the document, so that your treatment is handled the way you want it. I'm talking about things like, pulling plugs and that kind of thing, right? So just that document alone, really good idea to to visit that when you move.
Yeah, so important. And going back to what you said at the beginning with the incomplete estate plans, right? Even if a person has the proper documentation, what I tell people, and I'm not pitching my platform, folks. So what I tell people is, look, we can have all the forms in place and transfer the wealth, preserve the assets, and keep family out of court. But the family still has a lot of heavy lifting to do on the back end. All the digital identities, where are the credit cards, where are all the bank accounts located? Where do you keep, where are you keeping all the proof of ownership documents? Are they in a safe deposit box? Are they in your, home office desk drawer? And to help family avoid that massive scavenger hunt for information, because I've lived through it. It's time consuming. It's frustrating. There's added anxiety and stress, not to mention the time and expense that it takes to go through that process. So the missing piece to a complete estate plan is people having all this stuff at least written down and listed for family, so it make it easier, create a roadmap for them, right?
That's 100%. And something to think about along those lines is even stuff that you might not consider. So I've used this example before. When my mother passed away, one of her hotel rewards accounts had hundreds of thousands of points. Well, she cherished those more than the dollar value that they were worth. And if I wasn't able to salvage that value, I think she would have been rolling over in her grave. Because again, people overvalue or maybe unfairly value certain things. And I have found that those frequent traveler programs, among other things, people cherish those things.
There's a lot of value there.
How does your family access that if something happens to you? So just another one of those little tidbits.
Oh, absolutely. That, your frequent flyer miles, because many times they can be transferred.
That's right. And one tip on that is pretty much every program will say non-transferable. No harm in asking.
Right. Yeah. The answer is always no.
Yeah.
Until you ask.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely do that. And then I don't know if this is this is, I think, a funny case. I'll call it a nightmare just because I found it to be funny, but it goes along the lines of the small stuff. And I had a case many years back where the family had been a couple generations previous, had been a dairy operation, a commercial dairy. And they had an old barn with dairy bottles. Well, one of the family members probably went onto eBay and saw one bottle for sale for, let's say, $100. And that family member did the math and said, well, there's 1,000 bottles, so 1,000 times 100. Now, obviously, the market for dairy bottles from a certain small dairy is only going to be so deep, right? There's only so many buyers looking to pay $100 for a bottle. But the point of my story is we ended up multiple days, both sides of the family had their own attorney, and we were each paid our hourly rates to essentially monitor the division of these milk bottles, crates and crates of them. And my client was nice enough to give me one, and I have kept that on my bookshelf for years and use that as an example of a story to tell my clients, because no one wants to be paying attorneys hundreds of dollars an hour to divide up personal property, which almost certainly is not worth that money. And again, it's getting your estate plan put in place properly. If you have a big milk bottle collection and you want it to be distributed to a certain person, put it in the document. No problem. And that would have avoided this.
Well, yeah, we just titled that case When People Cry Over Spilt Milk, right?
You know what? I might have to steal that. That's good.
It's all yours, brother.
I like
it's all
it.
yours.
I like it.
But it is interesting. You know, I can imagine, and I know families fight. I mean, we had family members fighting over a pair of binoculars, you know, and I know things of sentimental value. Some things like milk bottles have, you know, real financial value, right? But I can't imagine, you know, you on one side, the other attorney on the other. We got 1,000 milk bottles, and it's like, all right, well, this one's in pretty good shape, so you get one good one, and this one's a better. And you get one of these, and just dividing them up.
You literally hit it. Okay, well, these are the quart bottles. Okay, you take one case of the quart bottles, we take one case, and literally, it was sort of funny.
Oh boy,
yeah,
wow, I love it. You know, all right, so moving on, and I love talking about death because I always tell people, lighten up. It's only death, right?
That's it.
It's not like it's not going to happen to me or you or any of us, right?
It very likely. I think it was in your book. You even it was a line I think I'm going to probably steal, and it was something about this book is for the one out of one of you that will die eventually, or something like that.
Yeah, you know, before I wrote the book, I did a lot of research. You know, with people have been on this planet for about 300,000 years, and I think I'm close on my statistics, but I think one out of one.
I'd say you're pretty close.
Is a number. You know, I might be off a little bit, but you know. So, but let's have some fun for a minute. So, you know, because we all do stuff outside of work, right? There you are, John.
All right. Sorry, I don't know if that was on my end or your end, but I apologize if it was my end.
That's all right. Depending on how long that pause was, it will either be edited out or our listeners will just be in suspense.
Well, I smiled the whole time. So, you know, either way.
Excellent. Did you hear my question?
You better re-ask it. I don't think I did.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Everyone loves doing things when they're not doing their normal things that pay the bills and whatnot. And when I was going through your bio, you know, you indicated doing some ushering at the brand new Legion Stadium, home of the Raiders. Super Bowl was there this year. So tell me about that. I think it'll be interesting. And then I really want to know if the hot dogs are any good up there.
Well, I can't tell you about the hot dogs because as an employee, we are not allowed to eat the stadium food, if you can believe that. So we have a break room, and it's free. And I always say it's the best free meal I will have that day. So it's but in all seriousness, we moved to Vegas 3 years ago. And one of the times we were on the plane coming down to look at some houses when I met a guy, and he had just moved from California, and he was working in casino surveillance part-time. He was a retired school superintendent. And I said, wow, that sounds sort of fun. And so I applied for a couple of jobs, didn't even get a call back or anything. And that's when I realized that my experience and the experience needed for a lot of these customer service jobs didn't totally line up. So I kept looking, and I saw Allegiant Stadium was hiring. I remembered back as a kid, we used to go to UCLA basketball games, and our usher, whose name I just don't remember, was an attorney in Encino. I always remember that. He was an attorney in Encino during the day, and he was a UCLA stadium usher at night. Super nice guy. So in the back of my mind, I always knew that was a possible move I could make. So I applied. In fact, we hadn't even moved yet. I interviewed via Zoom, and basically the minute we got to Vegas, I went to training and started working events. I do like to joke a little bit about it. After one event, I moved to supervisor, so I feel like they really saw potential in me. And then after about 6 months, I became a manager, and I typically manage 50 to 60 ushers at each game or concert at the stadium. You mentioned the Super Bowl. That day, I think my team had over 100 people on it, so it was pretty fun. And I will just say, I'm usually on the west side, VIP or premium space. So, come say hello when you're in Vegas. But it's just a great job. No, it does not pay as much as the day job, but I've met all kinds of interesting people. We have visitors, obviously, from around the world that come to Allegiant Stadium. I have coworkers with every imaginable background you can think of. And it's been fabulous. I've suggested it to many friends, a few of my friends. In fact, one of my California attorney friends who also lives in Las Vegas, he also works as an usher over there. So I'm not the only one. And
it's
great.
That's really cool and interesting from a standpoint of so when you're a stadium usher and you're working, I mean, you're around people for the most part. If the team is winning, they're having fun. This is a fun time, right? Or a concert or those kind of things, regardless of what's happening. And it's got to be night and different than dealing with a family at throes going through probate and everything else. I mean, it's just a total polar opposite experience.
Yeah. You hit it, John. It's the people that arrive at our doors to come in, into the stadium are with 99% certainty happy and excited and all of that. Yeah, I mean, sure, you probably had a couple of, maybe dads that were dragged to Taylor Swift that didn't want to be there. Even them, they probably enjoyed it because she put on a heck of a show. But in all seriousness, pretty much everyone comes in smiling. I often will joke with fans, particularly when they're of the opposing team, and I will say something like, keep smiling now, but I'm okay if you leave with a little frown after the game. And most all fans, pretty much they always, get a kick out of it and laugh with you. And most fans just there to have a good time. As you can imagine, we get, occasionally we are in Vegas, and occasionally we do have some fans that drink a little bit too much. Similar to your one of one, that is the one out of one of us will die. I would say pretty much one out of one of the people that get ejected have had too much to drink. I would say it's very close to that. Or some other intoxicating substance. And I'll joke, but it was maybe my, third or fourth Raider game. And it was the first time I had any ejections from my area. And there were two of them. And the first one was a young couple, early 20s, and it was first half. And I don't even remember what the young man had done to have to be walked out. And I just vividly remember his girlfriend, she was 20 or 21 or whatever. And she says, she just had this horrid look on her face and said, I can't believe we spent over $1,000 a ticket, and you got us kicked out of my first Raider game. And I thought, boy, he's going to be in the doghouse for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then that same game, at halftime, a season ticket holder was not doing what he was supposed to be doing. And I kindly asked him to stop. And before you know it, he's taking swipes at my headset on my head and telling me I'm nothing and going on with some swear words in there as well. And he just wouldn't stop. And, I just smiled. And as I saw security coming down to, take him out. But I always joke, and maybe even serious, is you don't know who your usher is. We all wear the same uniforms. We all look the same. And, I say with a guy like that, if I had my lawyer uniform on, he would have treated me significantly different than when I had my usher uniform on. And it's just something to keep in mind as we go through our days. You don't know. And I think we both you would agree, we all deserve to be treated with respect and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know what a person's story is. You never know why they do what they do. I think a lot of people assume that, the senior citizen who's passing out carts at Walmart needs that money. That guy could be a multimillionaire. He's passing out carts because he doesn't want to sit at home and wait to die.
And I'll tell you one other just quick, because I had a couple different legal stories that came up with this one, just what you said. A woman, we were in the break room, and she says, I heard you're an attorney. I had a question. And I said, well, I'm only a California attorney, so I can't advise about, any Nevada issues. And she said, and she said it's something about a will. And I said, well, you can ask and I can give you general information. And well, it wasn't about a will. She had a question about gifting because she was worried that her estate was too big. So she's there making $12.50 an hour at the stadium. And, like me, she's just doing it for fun. And so you just don't know, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I just say, my simple life advice to people is be nice. Be a nice human being.
There you
go. Be a good person, Hey, John, this has truly been awesome. It's always so much fun to connect with you and have a conversation. Finally, before we zip out here today, how can our listeners reach out to you if they have a specific question, need help with estate planning matters, or if they want to consider doing some ushering in their hometown?
Totally. I love talking about both of those. So we can talk about California estate and probate matters, or if you want to talk about ushering, we can do that. Easiest place is my website is californiaprobate.info. So it's .info, californiaprobate.info. And then I'll also say, and this would be more on the personal side, my wife and I just recently started a travel website. It's wanderingpals.com, and that is PALZ.com at the end. So wanderingpals.com, more on the personal side. But between the two, californiaprobate.info, wanderingpals.com, I would love to hear from some listeners.
Absolutely. And folks, I'm going to post in the show notes those two websites so you can reach out to John. And hey, John, this has been fun, man. I can't thank you enough for joining me today, sharing with our audience a bit about you, your legal experience, your personal life. So I've really enjoyed our time, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you.
Wow. I thank you for having this platform and having me on as a guest, John. It's been fun.
It's my pleasure. And a big thanks to all of you, our audience, for joining us again. Again, please feel free to reach out to John. His contact information will be in the show notes. And as always, my good friends, your life is your legacy. So plan ahead and make it a great day.